A Big Ten coach just shaded Utah, and he could not be more wrong.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time tuning into the show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with everyone in the YouTube comments, as well as on social media. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. My name is JC Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to have on today's show the host of Locked On Auburn, Zach Blackerby. Zach, so great to be with you. It's been a long time since Utah brought on Landon King, so it's been a bit since we've been able to talk. We'll actually maybe mention something about Landon King late. Have to talk about a couple. There's been two Auburn players, one football, one basketball, came to Utah. Crazy. Yeah. So we have to talk about that. But first, I've been wanting to have this discussion with someone who is a member of the top two conferences in college football and college basketball as well, and sometimes basketball. Big 12 obviously has great basketball, but in the Big Ten and the
not
SEC,
as good as the SEC, but y'all do have good basketball.
Not as big as yes. This year the SEC was the best. I've said that as well.
Crazy.
So we'll see if they can keep that. We'll see if they can keep that. But Matt Rule, Big Ten coach, so still part of this, the top two super conferences, all the things that here. He had a very interesting comment. He shaded really the entire Big 12 too, and I think Utah in particular should definitely be offended when he said there are a lot of kids that I would recruit and love to have come here, but then they tell me they're going to a Big 12 school, and I say, well, why are you going there? I mean, it's a different level of ball. And I think as a Utah fan, I'm absolutely offended by that because we've beaten Florida before. We went down to the Swamp, one play away from winning right there too. I just think it's also different when we're talking about some of the lower tier teams in the Big Ten, the SEC, trying to grab onto the coattails basically of the more successful teams. So is there still a gap? Yes, but I think absolutely some of these middle tier and lower tier teams, the Big 12, ACC, whatever, Utah especially, we absolutely can still compete with these teams.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that the SEC is the best conference in college football. The Big 10 is second, and the Big 12 is third. But has Matt Rule earned the cachet within the Big 10 to talk like this? I mean, it seems like every time he has a press conference, he's throwing shade at somebody or something, whether he's dissing spring games because people want to steal his players, which everybody kind of followed suit. So maybe he was right. But then to throw shade at an entire conference when he hasn't really figured out how to even like navigate in the bottom tier of the Big 10 yet, I just don't know if he's the guy to say that from the Big 10. So I was a little surprised when I saw that, JT. But I don't think the gap between like the middle tier of where the Big 12 is versus where Nebraska currently is in the Big 10 is that much different, if it's different at all.
If Nebraska played at Utah, I feel like Utah would be favored. Agree or disagree?
Sure.
I know Utah's coming off a down year. I get that for a second.
I think it's close, but yeah, sure. I mean, I think Whittingham's a better coach than him.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I know they had success at Baylor, and you mentioned all the other stuff he's usually involved in. I've seen more. He's done the TikTok dances off season. Like those are the things he's been blown up for more than actually being able to win games too. But I even just look at things like, and as you mentioned, like SEC being the best, that's fine for this conversation. But sure. I look at teams like what we've seen from Big Ten teams or whoever, like just as last year, we saw Mississippi State, not a great SEC team, obviously, but they go down to Arizona State. They lose that game right there. Arizona State also should have beaten Texas. I'm not even talking about the flag. I'm talking about 4th and 13, get a stop, and you beat the Longhorns. So I still feel like the tops of these conferences, too, are capable on neutral sites. It's incredibly hard to go into Austin and get a win. It's incredibly hard to go into any of these stadiums and get a win. But neutral site, I absolutely believe that these Big 12 teams are still capable of putting a roster together, and that should give Utah fans hope. I don't think it's like Utah will never beat an SEC or Big 10 team again. I think they absolutely still can.
Yeah, I do too. I also think the Big 12 is in a different situation than the other two conferences that we're talking about. Yes, the SEC added Texas and Oklahoma. Yes, the Big 10, added the LA schools and Oregon and Washington. The Big 12 has gone through a situation where you lose arguably your largest two brands, but you still like haven't had multiple seasons where you're like the current version of what you are. And so like you had that one year where, all of you guys joined the Big 12 and you still had Texas and Oklahoma, and then you lose those guys. Like, so I know there was so much parity and watching the Big 12 title race over the last half of the season was awesome because there were so many folks that were in it. And nobody really like emerged until until the end. And we obviously know, who won it and who went to the playoff. But I do think it's interesting to see over time who is going to rise to the top of the Big 12, because there will be a brand. Yep. There will be one of these programs that does that. Is it going to be Arizona State? Is it going to be Utah? Is it going to be BYU? It's going to be someone. And I bet that when that happens over the next 4 years or so, those top two programs that do rise to the top, I think they're going to be in a better situation than Nebraska currently is. So once again, I think it's odd that Rule was the one to say this.
And I totally agree, because once again, like we talked about, yes, the top of the SEC, the top of the Big Ten, they're in a great place. But if you could tell me right now, I do think Utah's trending in a positive direction, but I look at someone like Texas Tech, who they just had the top three portal class, right? Like, who am I going to have more faith in? Texas Tech's future or Nebraska's future? I have more faith in Tech's future, because in the NIL era, if you can invest more there, you're going to have a better roster than some of these Big Ten teams that don't have the NIL investment to that level. And that's what encourages me about Utah, is they've been able to retain some of, not all, but some of their best players. Your buddies down at Bama actually have one of our cornerbacks now in the NIL era. So I do feel like if you can get that NIL threshold up, that does allow you to compete at an even better level than maybe in some ways was possible in the past.
Yeah. Well, first off, don't ever say buddies at Bama again.
That's fair.
No buddies. I'm joking. Yeah, your buddies over in Provo, right? I don't think.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I would never say that to you. No, I'm joking. Yeah, I think like when you look at the situation of, like, if we're just going to compare, like you just did, Texas Tech to Nebraska, it's like if one of those teams make the playoff this year, it's like we're all picking Tech. Every single person that is remotely paying attention, because the path to the playoff is easier in the Big 12 than it is for anybody in the Big 10 that's not Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State. Like, I think that's fair to say, because it's 1,000%. So top heavy. After that, I think it's a pretty big drop off. I don't know where the drop off, there is one, I'm sure, because there is in every conference. Like, I don't know where the drop off is in the Big 12. It seems to be a lot closer, like 1 through 6, than the Big 10 is 1 through 6. And the SEC 1 through 6. And I think that's an argument in favor of the Big 12, because, like, while you may not have that one team that's emerged, I do think you have several teams that are going to be able to compete for a Big 12 title year after year. And so does that mean, the cream of the crop is, like, it's not Ohio State, it's not Georgia, but like your fourth or fifth best team, like, can they compete with other conferences' fourth or fifth best team? Like, possibly. I don't think that's crazy to say, especially when you compare the Big 12 to the Big 10.
And just what gives me, once again, so much hope is we just saw Arizona State go from literally worst from first in the conference, and not just a fluky first, they almost beat a Texas team. If
they should have beaten Texas.
Should have beaten Texas. Exactly. And if you're a Utah, you look at how strong this Utah team is in the trenches. That's what the SEC prides themselves on. So you got Kyle Whittingham and soon to be Morgan Scalley, but defensive-minded head coach, physical in the trenches. That has the makings of being able, if you get into a game like that, being able to score and upset. And we mentioned the SEC talent is there still when you're talking about a lot of the top players. Well, Utah just added some former SEC transfers. So what kind of a difference are they going to make on the football field as well as on the basketball court? We're going to tell you in one moment. Today's show is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick. Amazon, did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. As easy as you can stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. They have the latest technology for elevated playing with Wi-Fi 6/6E and auto low latency mode advanced technology. Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smooth, more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speed you need to stay competitive. There's also that affordable pricing too. play high quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console, a Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you want to plug in and play. Make sure you guys head over now and you can go to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatibility controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K, second gen Fire TV Stick 4K Max, first and second gen, and Fire TV Cube third gen. Once again, you can head over and check out Amazon's Fire TV Stick 4K to get the best gaming today. Zach Blackerby of Auburn back here with me. And Zach, I mentioned it, Utah added some transfers. Let's start with football. JC Hart is coming over here. Now with guys like Hart, he didn't produce a ton at Auburn, so now coming over to Utah. What should Utah fans expect from Hart?
I think you should, a guy with tremendous upside. I love JC Hart, both as a human and as a player. Was super bummed to see him go, but you look at the guys ahead of him. Auburn on the field has had some questionable results, not at corner. They've been exceptional at corner, even, during the potato famine when Brian Harsin was our head coach. And so you look at some of the guys that are ahead of him and it's like, yeah, they're younger. They're 4/ should be 5-star guys. Like, it makes sense. JC Hart was a guy who was he's a local guy to Auburn, plays like 20 minutes from the university, wanted to be at Auburn. And you look at his tape, it was all against it was against smaller competition. And he just absolutely dominated. But there was some questions about his size and just the overall level of play. So it took Auburn a long time to say, hey, we're going to finally take you. They eventually took him. He was one of the last members of that class. And heard good things, just throughout the offseason when he was able to play. Just never really cracked the two deep because of how deep Auburn was at defensive back. And so then there was this ongoing thing of, okay, well, let's change him to wide receiver. Auburn needed more help in the wide receiver room instead of, just at corner because they were set there. And I think he's a natural corner. I'm not saying he's not athletic enough, but like I think he's a corner. And so then they moved him back. And so did that hinder his development at all? And then there were talks about maybe moving him back to receiver. So I think him entering the portal makes sense just because I don't think Auburn really had use for him anymore, which I hate because I think JC Hart is a guy you want in your locker room. So that's JC Hart, the player. JC Hart, the person, is a great student, a great human being, a great person that you just want to be around. And so, Utah got, I think, a really under the radar addition. I don't know what your cornerback room and situation looks like, but I think JC Hart is an exceptional add. And I know Auburn people will be cheering hard for JC Hart.
I'm really curious in a situation like this. You have a guy like Blake Cotton. If you're Utah, UC Davis corner who started there a couple of years now. He comes over for Utah. So does he win out because he has that experience, or does a guy like Hart come in with that SEC pedigree, a higher recruit? Is he able to be the guy? Because Smith Snowden's kind of entrenched there. You have Elijah Davis who started last year, and Utah, another school, really good defensive backs as well. You got guys like Jalen Johnson doing their thing in the NFL. So it is a competitive room there. We're going to switch over to basketball in one moment. But Zach, I am curious about this from an SEC school because I look at it for Utah. When players transfer away from Utah, there's a few exceptions, but for the most part, it doesn't always go the best. How has it worked for Auburn in their past transfers? Have those guys gone on to have success, or has it been a mixed bag maybe?
Yeah, so the most famous one is Bo Nix, right?
Point.
Is okay at Auburn.
Yeah.
And, didn't really have a whole lot of help. Then he almost wins the Heisman first-round draft pick, took the Broncos to the playoffs. But most of them aren't that. Most of them are guys that, Auburn has done a great job of keeping its starters outside of Bo Nix. And since Hugh Freeze has been here, they really haven't lost a starter in the portal. So a lot of it's been role players, guys that were kind of unproven, similar to JC Hart, going to other places. And a lot of times it doesn't seem like it's P4. They usually transfer down. And so this is a little bit different of a situation, I think. But they typically haven't excelled after they've left Auburn, I would say.
And that's what I'm curious to see if Hart will be able to do that. When Utah is interested in defensive backs just because of their history with that position, I usually get excited and feel good about it. And Hart's no different than that. So I mentioned how deep the Utah cornerback room is. Well, Utah's basketball roster is being totally makeshifted when you have a new coach coming in. The Alex Jensen era about to get underway. You guys have a guy who we got, Jakai Howard, and he had quite the interesting year last year, Zach. A lot of more noise off the court than on it, but a talented player nonetheless. I mean, let's start maybe with the player first, and then we can talk about the person here as well. What do you think of the player?
Yeah. Jakai Howard is so athletic and so physically gifted. And I think some of the stuff that happened last year, as far as his role on the team, you hope that he learned from it and you hope that he would grow from it. And there were, times where some of the times his behavior and support of like his teammates and overall role on the team and maybe character to some extent was questioned. And it seemed like, it happened multiple times. And it did seem like every time it happened, he responded better and better and better. Hopefully this transfer happens. I mean, everybody expected him to enter the portal. We were halfway through the year and you're talking about everybody you're going to leave. Like there was never the discussion of like, okay, well, Jakai Howard could do this for Auburn next year. That just wasn't part of it. It was just assumed that he was going to leave because it wasn't a fit. So, some of these things, like there was a video that went viral of, him shaking his head because he wanted to shoot the three and somebody else made it. I forgot who it was. And, it looked rough. And, there were times where in foul situation, he'd go in and he'd shoot the ball and he'd drain a three. Like he's an incredibly gifted jumper and shooter. And I think he could be a good defender if he could put the effort behind him, but he was buried. I mean, Auburn was a Final Four team with a Final Four roster. And at that wing spot, like Auburn was deep. They had a lot of older guys that have been playing and like, you can't bench those guys because they were so effective in scoring and they were better defenders than Jakai Howard. So it was a tricky situation. And this is a guy that even in his recruitment, everybody knew how talented he was, but there were several big programs that backed off recruiting him because they feared that this would happen. And Bruce Pearl, being the coach that he is, like he's done such a good job of building a culture at Auburn. And there's been players that other coaches had questions on that have gone into this Auburn culture and they've been fine. And they were key parts of Auburn winning an SEC championship. That's happened a bunch over the last decade or so now, which does feel weird to say. Jakai seemed to be different than that. So my co-host, contributor Daryl Dapprich, he went to San Antonio for the Final Four. And obviously the media access is so much more when you're in San Antonio. And he told this story on Locked on Auburn during that week is, when the media was available going to the locker room for interviews and all that, Jakai Howard was just by himself. Teammates weren't around him. Media didn't go talk to him. I mean, it looked like nobody knew who he was. Like he wasn't like part of this super close team. So, I hate that for him. I hate that whatever happened, it didn't work out at Auburn. If I had to predict, is it going to work out at Utah? My gut is no, just the gut reaction, just because if he can put it together, JT, he could be one of the best players in your conference. Like he is so physically gifted. But you see this every now and then with like
the Big 12.
I think he can be great. Not good. He can be great. He's just got to get out of his own way. And, we've seen this in the past with other talented guys. They have a hard time getting out of their own way. I'm pulling for Jakai. I don't know. He'd have to be like a total, like, I'm not saying that people can't change and you can't have this major growth, but I would love for Jakai Howard to put it all together and be great for Utah.
Biggest story last year he was involved in was off the court. He got fought with a teammate on the plane. Plane had to get turned around. The other one, he went into the locker room early, tweeted out on his phone, and then came back on the bench, didn't play. And then he's getting into it with his head coach as well, too. So, and also, like, I'm just going to say, like, that's just what gets out, right? Like, I'm sure there were other things behind the scenes that probably go on there as well, too, Zach. So it's a complex situation, and you just hope that Utah has the infrastructure in place to be able to do something here. But like the fact,
and these guys are young, JT. These guys are young. I mean, he's a guy who's dominated his whole life playing basketball. Then you get put into a situation where there's 10 guys on the team that are probably more deserving, not better, but more deserving of playing time. And they all.
As Zach just muted his mic somehow. He's very passionate. He's going hard in on this. He somehow knocked his mic out of commission there. So either way, I'm sure what he was going to say was incredibly insightful, but it's either way, it's going to be fascinating. We end up seeing what happens with Howard, Hart, all of these transfer additions. What are they going to be able to do? I'm curious to see. And one thing I'm really curious to ask Zach about here in a moment is what is going to end up happening with Devin Dampier? And why am I asking Zach about that? Well, Zach saw Devin Dampier last year. So who better to ask about, hey, is Devin Dampier, Utah's quarterback, ready to make the P4 leap than someone who got to watch and see him against P4 competition last year? We're going to be talking about that in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. With Monarch Money, have you just ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building your wealth. They have fantastic insight. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save even more. So also that all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Easy collaborations too are something they offer, where Monarch Money makes it easy to manage money with your partner. You can track shared personal accounts and set goals and stay on the same page without the stress. You can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, at monarchmoney.com. 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All caps, no spaces, monarchmoney.com. You enter that, then enter the code LOCKEDONCollege, 50% off your first year with Monarch Money today. Zach Blackerby back here, got his microphone situation all sorted out.
Maybe. I don't know. Can you hear me? Sorry about that.
I can't. Zach, I want to ask you, Devin Dampier, Utah got him. There's a lot of excitement around him. You got to see him last year because Auburn did play New Mexico. Now, not surprisingly, you guys won the game by a lot, 45-19. Dampier in the game, 22 for 44, 291 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, only 5 carries for 31 yards, but that does not show how many yards he had running for his life behind the line of scrimmage too. What did you make of Dampier against that Auburn defense?
Yeah, I remember watching Dampier leading up to that game thinking, this guy's talented. This guy has the ability to make plays and is super athletic. Not really what you expect when you're scouting the New Mexico Lobos on game week, but it's tough to evaluate guys like this because the situation around him is terrible. It was awful last year, but then you see him make an incredible throw or use his athleticism to escape a situation where it looked like he was the only guy on the team and it was 1 versus 11. I like Dampier. I think if you told me, hey, he goes to the P4 level and he's able to turn into a really solid college quarterback, it wouldn't shock me at all. It would not shock me at all. Some of the decisions, like he threw a lot of picks.
12
last year. Looks like he threw 12 picks, just looking at it, 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. How much of that was him running for his life? And so he felt like he had to throw it a little bit quicker than he probably will have to throw it at Utah. I think that's something. How much of it was just overall system? How much of it was just playing teams that were more talented than them? I think there's a lot to go into that. So tough to kind of project how good he could be at the P4 level, but I think it makes sense. I think this is a good pickup for Utah.
Feels like a good pickup, and I'm excited to see what Dampier can do. It feels like he's a guy who's ready for the P4 jump, led the top 4 offense in terms of yards per game in the country last year, reuniting with his offensive coordinator at Utah that he had that success with. So I'm excited to see it this year. Feels like it's going to be big for Utah. But one thing that's unfortunate for Utah is that one of the key parts about that offense we thought we were going to get to see was Landon King. And Landon King's in the portal. I mentioned that off the start of the show. Landon King was from Auburn. So we've both gotten to see Landon King now. Now he's over at Duke. I'm going to ask you this, Zach. Do you think Landon King is going to put all the pieces together at Duke? Because I'm still rooting for the guy. I hope it works out for him, but I don't know. It's a lot of years now of us still kind of like waiting for him to reach his potential.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's athletic. I think he's shifty. And I didn't watch him any at Utah last year. But I mean, I know like what we saw at Auburn. It's like, okay, this guy could put it all together. Auburn brought in a tight end to kind of hop him. And so he responded by leaving, which makes a ton of sense. But ironically enough, like I think Auburn could use him right now. So him going to Duke, he's got to operate in a system that allows him to play, I think, more of like a large wide receiver than a blocking tight end, which I assume he was asked to block a lot at Utah, given what you guys like to do and the mindset of your head coach. But I don't know if Duke is going to allow him to do that or not. I'm not sure. But athletically, there's a lot of traits to like about him for sure.
There's a lot of traits to like about him. He just couldn't put it together at Utah. You mentioned the blocking being the biggest thing, but then bad quarterback play, not getting the ball. Yeah. And I agree. You got to treat him more as a wide receiver. If you're asking him to block, it's probably going to be problematic, but he is a talented pass catcher. I still remember the camp highlight, which in the business where we all know the danger of falling in love with camp highlights, but he dusted our top quarter in like a one-on-one Smith Node. So we were all excited, thought he was going to break out, and didn't end up being the case, which happens way too frequently overall.
Yeah, what Duke is wild. What they're paying that quarterback $4 million.
He's the Tulane quarterback, right?
Yeah, Mensa.
Yes,
yeah, which I liked. I don't know if he's worth one of the higher paid quarterbacks in college football. I don't know if I'm buying that, but you got to think they'll be throwing it. So yeah, maybe Landon King will get a few tutties at Duke next year.
That's what makes this so interesting too, just tying it like full circle with some of the things we were talking about earlier with the gaps in college football. Like seeing Duke, like a basketball powerhouse, is becoming more of a football powerhouse because they are willing to spend the money. So it's just another layer of things.
North Carolina's in a similar boat as well. I mean, it's interesting to see.
They're in the headlines for other reasons, but yeah.
Yeah, they're still throwing money around though. I mean, Auburn is in a recruiting battle with a quarterback. It seems like it's North Carolina or them. Mm-hmm. And I think it feels like 2 years ago it would have been, from an NIL standpoint, Auburn would have been the clear favorite, but North Carolina, they're throwing it around. So good for Bill Belichick and his girlfriend.
Good for Bill. Yeah, he needs a win right now. So good for Bill. I got a win because I got you on the show, Zach Blackerby. Really appreciate you making the time to hop on. Make sure you guys head over to Locked On Auburn, and you never know. Maybe you guys will. We talked about Bama grabbing someone. Maybe in the future you guys will be taking one of our players, Zach. You never know what it is there.
Yeah, no, you never know. You never know. Could be some backup corner at Utah ends up being an Auburn Tiger one day. You never know.
True. It's a wild, wild sphere. Zach, thanks again for making the time to hop on.
Hey, thanks, buddy.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We'll see you again tomorrow. Talk about the latest in Utah athletics on tomorrow's show.